welcome to another episode of Carta de Vineri. Tonight with a very select company with Marius Turda and Mihai Buze, who's just joined us as well as other people from the Romanian community and the wider community to talk about a very interesting book in Romanian and căutarea românului perfect, and in English, searching for the perfect Romanian. So without further ado, I will pass on to my colleague, Nicola, who will introduce Marius, and we'll take it from there.
Thank you, Serena. Yeah, I'm delighted to be able to introduce our speaker for this evening's conversation, Marius Turda. Originally from Maramuresh, Marius is Professor of 20th Century Central and Eastern European Biomedicine in the School of Education, Humanities and Languages at Oxford Brookes University, where he has taught since 2005. His research focuses on the history of eugenics, race and racism, as well as the Holocaust. He has authored and edited over 20 books on issues of race, racism, and the history of eugenics, the Holocaust, and the history of anthropology in Romania and Hungary, including the book we will be discussing this evening, which, as Serena mentioned, in English is In Search of the Perfect Romanian. The book won the 2025 Essay Prize awarded by Romania's most prestigious literary journal, Observator Cultural, and the English translation will be coming out in summer of 2026. So thank you, Marius. Just to reiterate, this is very much a kind of conversation. So anyone who has questions, please do ask them. I can perhaps kick off by asking you, perhaps you could briefly introduce the book for those not familiar with its contents, though I assume most of our audience tonight will be.
Right. Thank you very much. And I hope you can hear me now. The clouds have burst here across London and it rains cats and dogs. I could barely hear myself. So if there is any sound that you can't identify, it's basically the rain. So now it's going down. So apologies for that. I want to also thank both Serena and Nicola for inviting me to say a few words about my book and to have this conversation. It's a privilege. And thank you, Yolanda, for suggesting my name. So everything good that happens in my life, I have to blame you for it. I would have been now in the pub having a beer, and now look at me in front of the computer talking about a book. So, yeah, well, what can you say? And thank you, Mihai, as well. It's good to see you after so long for agreeing to come and talk to us. So, yeah, so this is a book that some of you have gathered by now. It's a book dear to me for a number of reasons. And I think the first and foremost reason is that as academics, we tend to write books that matter for our careers or matters for our promotion or matters because the conversation publicly is going in a particular direction, or because simply we are not good at anything else. We're just simply useless. It rarely happens, and it took me a number of years until you get to a point you want to write something that really matters to you. And I wanted to write a book about Romania, the country I was born in, which I left when I was so I left Maramuresh, the region I was born into, when I was 18. So I lived more years in London than I lived in Maramuresh. I wanted to write something about that part of the world, about my family, about my grandparents, great-grandparents, and then something about Romania in terms of how I understand it. So I got to the point, actually, I said, I'm going to write a book in the way I like it, and even if no one reads it, it's not a problem because it's a book for myself. So I ended up putting together some of the articles I published about Romanian history for the past 20 years. And then I realized that it wouldn't work like that. And the translation, I wasn't happy with it. So I started putting everything together, and then all the sources I had, all the memories, and the language nuances that were so unique, and some of them lost, from all these texts that I read. And the language, I I knew it in the deep of my soul, old Romanian language that was spoken in the interwar period, which I remember vaguely from my great parents, but which disappeared during communism. And I could regain that kind of uniqueness, flavor of a language long gone from the texts. So then I decided I'm going to write a completely different book. And I'm going to tell a story about how this big debate, which is what are Romanians, who are the Romanians, is the biggest debate that characterizes Romanian society. It's been happening for 2 centuries now, and it's going on in all its forms. And that's my take on it. So this is how the book came along. I wanted to make sure that I write something that matters to me, that I'm actually enjoy, reading and rereading. And then when I was looking at the English translation, I was reading all these texts again, and I realized, oh, you know what? I normally don't reread myself, and I'm sure many of you don't want to reread stuff you wrote in the past. But this one actually was quite all right. I was looking at certain paragraphs, and I'm like, oh, bloody hell. I mean, that's quite nice what you said here. It's quite important. As someone who doesn't have to do much anymore, I'm getting quite old, and I want to retire to more greener pastures, as it were. I came up with this book. Now, it turned out actually it was quite a successful book, and people liked it. They read it. As you mentioned, Nicola, it was awarded a prize. The reviews are very good, and one of my favorite reviews was written by Mihai, who's here with us tonight. So he actually took a completely different direction than I kind of anticipated. Now, there was another, and I'll stop my answer here. There was another dimension to it, which is basically I was always very unhappy with how the past was and is discussed in Romania overall. The topics which are not mentioned, the skeletons, as I call them, in the closet, which no one wants to address. It's like that kind of, a very toxic relationship people have to each other because they've never been honest with each other. As a society, you cannot believe. I mean, you do for many, many, many years, in some cases for centuries. But it's a failed relationship because at some point you have to come out, you have to come clean about something you did in the past. And that has never happened in Romania. The Holocaust, the genocides, the pogroms, the racism against the Roma, people with disabilities, sexism, all of these sort of things, keep hiding under the carpet, keep digging an even bigger hole in the garden and bury them there. So at some point I said, well, that cannot go on. The historians in Romania seem very lukewarm to the idea of engaging with these topics. And having built a career here on the history of eugenics and racism, I thought I can actually use that knowledge and kind of empathy towards delicate subjects to write about that in the Romanian case. So whilst this was a book written for my own pure leisurely pleasure, at the same time, of course, I was fully aware that I'm engaging with something very serious in a big debate in Romanian historiography and Romanian society, which is the debate about the national character. So I was a bit anarchic in the kind of Sex Pistols kind of way. So I wanted to release one book that would change the debate. But I did it purposefully, as it were. So I undermined everything that basically is being published on the national character in the Romanian historiography until now, under the guise of saying that basically I don't know much about this topic, but I want to tell you my version of what I know. And this is something Mihai has pointed out in his review as well, that basically is not a moralizing book, is not a theoretical book. I hope one day someone will write a theoretical book about this topic. It's just simply tell the story the way you could find it in the documents, tell the story for anyone to hear it, and then everyone can formulate his or her or their own opinion about it. So I'm not telling you that this is what you should take from the book. You should take whatever you like from the book and whatever you feel it means to you. And it means a lot of things to a lot of people. So if you're a Roma person, a male Roma person, you read the book in a certain way. You're a female Roma person, you read about sterilization of Roma women, you take something else. If you're a Hungarian from Cluj, but who remembers the Holocaust, and your grandparents didn't do anything to stop the deportation of the Jews from Kolochvar, you read in a certain way. If you're secular from secular land and you read about Romanians trying to make you a Romanian through anthropological and sociological research, you take something else from the book. If you're from Maramuresh, where 99% of the Jews have disappeared and were exterminated in Auschwitz, you read something else. And that's something that when it did happen, I was in a way elated, but also slightly traumatized. And I did say this at some point because I felt that all this toxicity that comes from our Romanian past had to be excised from my mind, because I read so many bad things said about so many other people than Romanians, and that kind of language and that kind of scenarios and images they put forward and what they did had to be left somewhere. But then I realized, of course, that's exactly the ultimate form of coming to terms with your own past, is really to allow yourself to be torn apart and to look deeply into the most uncomfortable corner of your soul and pull out the thorn and then breathe again, and then breathe with others around you and start a conversation. So this is what the book was hoping to achieve.
Well, Serena and I do have questions, but we very much like to encourage any of you to ask your own questions. So would anyone like to? Roxandra?
Yes, thank you, Marius. I had two reasons to be interested in this book. First of all, because professionally, I started my research in the field of nationalism studies, where the issue of identity, especially Romanian identity, is ever present. And then personally, until I read your book, I didn't realize that my family was actually engaged in the process of eugenics, at least in the communist period, when my mother ran a lab that tested blood before people got married for venereal diseases. And I remember those vials of blood. They're one of the sort of first memories of my childhood. And as somebody who lives abroad and has British children, it's been an interesting mix of emotions. So I was going to ask, following up from what you were just saying, whether it was easier to write this book because you're a Romanian abroad. In other words, you are very much sort of anchored into the realities of Romania, but at the same time, you're at a healthy distance that allows you to, be honest.
Now, I would have written the book anyway, even if I had been in the village in Maramuresh or at the University of Bucharest. I think it's a matter of when you write something rather than where you write it. So I felt that after a certain age, I was able to look back at my family and country's history and write about that, irrespective of where I was in the world, is where I was on my mental map as an individual, rather than what I was physically in a particular country. So this would not have changed anything. In fact, it would have been easier had I been in Romania, because trying to retrace all of my sources, it was absolutely horrific. Because obviously back in the day, when I did research, we didn't have internet, and I used to have write everything on a piece of paper. And I have folders and folders of little pieces of paper. So I'm trying to remember all of the sources. And if you look at the book, it's got about 1,000 footnotes. It's only primary sources. That, doing it from here, yes, Mihai, you could sip a little bit. I will give you a stronger Horinka, but it's hard from here. Also, yeah, so no, that did not. So that's one thing. I think the thing about being away from the country makes sense or works in terms of the debates you're engaging with. So the kind of things I would say, maybe it matters if I'm not there. I can say it in a different way because I'm here and I feel that I can say it in a different way. But I've been socialized in the Anglo-Saxon culture for so long now that all of my Romanian identity is connected basically to my native Maramuresh. which is extremely provincial, is very kind of archaic. And if I were to speak in Romanian, and if I really want to speak in dialects, I will speak with a dialect like a peasant from Maramuresh, and I'm very proud of that. It will not be literary Romanian that I will be speaking, which I always, sometimes I do it like, purposefully. When I go to Romania, I go to university and I speak to everyone as if I just arrived from the stables. I just finished milk the cows and I fed the pigs, and then I go and talk about this topic. And I do it on purpose exactly to illustrate that actually it doesn't really matter your social status or your academic credentials. What it matters in how much you care about what you want to say. And if you care about something a great deal, you'll find the words to say it, even if they are simple words, even if you're illiterate or uneducated, you have something to say to the world and you should say it. So, but I know what you mean by being away and trying to say things. It's easier to say certain things because you're not in the country, but not in this particular case. 10 years ago, it was different. Yeah, when I worked on the history of eugenics, no one in Romania cared, or history of racism even less, Hungary even more complicated. And it mattered, of course, that I was in Oxford rather than in Budapest or in Bucharest. That it mattered a great deal for my career, but not now.
I can see that we have Mihai with his hand up. I hope he's not going to ask us all if he can have a beer, because that's something that I've already said. Feel free. We don't advertise that, but it is, after all, Friday night, so it is your time as well. What was your question? And you're talking on mute. That's done. You're on mute. Let me unmute you.
No.
Mihai.
Mute.
There we go.
You can hear me now?
Yes.
Yes, okay. Listen to me, Terry Lee. Have you read Ian McEwan?
Yep. Are you talking to me?
No, I'm talking to Terry Lee. I don't see Martinen.
Yep. Yeah, she's
Okay.
there.
Okay. Have you read Ian
No.
McEwan? No, okay. He has a book, The Cement Garden, a novel. Well, I can tell you that this is Romania. This is Romania, and Marius is right. A cement garden. Nobody talks about what is buried under the cement slabs. Nobody. He's very brave to talk about that mysteries, that hidden secrets of our common homeland. And I have another question. This time for Dr. Sherman. Dr. Sherman, Marius has talked about something called Maramuresh. For a Romanian, it is a clear reference, but I think I can explain better than himself. You know, have you seen the Lord of the Rings, the movie?
Lord of the Rings?
Yes.
The movie? Lord of the Rings?
Yes. Okay. Okay. There in Lord of the Rings, there is a very, very, fancy region called the Shire. The Shire, remember? Where the little dwarves live. Well, in Romania's imaginations, oh, fuck, I don't know what happens. In Romanian imaginary,
Okay, can I ask everyone to just go on mute if you're not speaking? I believe some of us are connected on multiple devices, which makes this noise. Try again, Mihai, please.
I think it might be Carol's
Yeah.
microphone.
I've managed to mute, so carry
Oh.
on. Mihai, let's see. Ask to unmute. Unmute Mihai.
okay. Now, can I be heard? Yes?
Yes.
In Romanian imaginary, this remote part of the country, this Maramureș, is considered like the Shire in the Lord of Rings. It is a very, very, picturesque scenery part of the country where people are considered to live a idyllic life, which is fake, completely fake. Marius will explain. But we, as let's say, people born and raised in big cities, oh, Maramureș, it is like in the fairy tales, happy people, wolves, bears, I don't know, traditions. It is like I do repeat myself, like a fairy tale, which is a fake, completely fake. Marius, please. Thank you.
Well, yeah, I know. I completely agree. What you see now is fake. As I say in my book, luckily, when I was a child, that old Maramureș was still alive, and obviously that died around 1960s with the transformation. Well, basically, it died with the first anthropologists who came to Maramureș to discover the Garden of Eden. So Claude Carnot, Gail Kleinman, and people who came and said, well, Maramureș is like
the Shire.
Like the Shire, yeah. That's the best way. Before that, Maramureș was not a place that actually existed much on the popular imagination. I mean, to the point, because of the Jewish population, and I mentioned this in the book, Yorga says, because Maramureș had the highest number of Jews in Greater Romania. So, and he complained that Maramureș, which of course had a very long history, and my family goes back to the 16th century. So I come from one of the few people here actually can say that I have lived there, well, not me personally, but my family, for 7 or 6 centuries, right? So he had a very illustrious history with the royal family, Hungarian royal family, bestowing privileges on the old families from Maramureș. They were free people. They were not, like in Transylvania, subservient to the... But all of that disappeared, of course, by the 1900s, and by 1920s, Maramureș was basically a place of very poor, illiterate, alcoholic peasants, to the point that actually Yorga says this place will disappear soon. But in the 1960s and 70s was reinvented, as Mihai says, on the popular imagination. So that's absolutely true. That's in northern Transylvania, Terry, so that's where the place is. This will die with me, and that's a very sad story in my case, in many ways, because I left, like many of you, we left the country. And of course, my children, whilst they understand kind of mythically that this is something very important, they cannot kind of identify in the way that it is kind of real. And I'm not the kind of person to create a fake sense of identity for them, to talk to them about a Maramureș, which is fake. And because that Maramureș is dead, I'd rather speak about that Maramureș, which I was the last survival of it, in the past tense. So that exists only in the memory of very few people who are now very old. The entire Jewish tradition of Maramureș has disappeared. Romanian villages now in Maramureș are 100% completely unable to remember any traces of Jewish life, whilst before 1944, they were 90% Jewish, which is absolutely shocking. So the entire tradition is completely different than it used to be. But that's a different story, Mihai. And that's something that I suppose with any dying worlds, when you see the dawn and you see the kind of the apocalypse is looming on the horizon, the hope is that, memory will preserve some sense of history, and memory will allow certain stories to continue from generation to generation. And we are part of that story, Mihai. You in your own way, talking about Maramureș like the Shire, me, kind of the last defunct member of a community that is long gone. But all of us together thinking that, okay, we have something to say about Romania in a way or another, or about any other country that we belong to at some point in our lives. We belong to many countries in our lives, real and imaginary. the point is, what do you decide to embrace?
Been fed, he's been out, he's pooped, he's barked.
Yeah, exactly. Okay.
I think we have another question from Adrian.
Yeah.
He's got his hand up.
Thank you. Thank you, Marius. It's more a comment. I want to point, the idea was already mentioned in a way before. I would like to point the contribution that Marius did regarding also the memory of the Roma Holocaust in Romania with this book. Why I'm saying this? Because during the time I interviewed a lot of Roma survivors of the deportation to Transnistria, and I had also the chance to speak with their families. And what I saw, it was a shame of being deported, the shame of being labeled by the authorities as being people that must be expelled from the society. And why I point this? Because this discussion in fact labeled the entire memory of the Roma Holocaust, not only in Romania, all over the Europe, in the sense that Roma were persecuted on social criteria. But the book of Marius and the chapter about Roma makes an important contribution also on what means today's social justice, in the sense that it's explained that the criteria that stand at the basis of the Roma persecution, in fact, were of eugenic nature. And also this aspect, it's very little discussed in the Romanian historiography. And I would say that it's even rejected. So from this point of view, I think the book, not only for the Roma community, but I refer especially to the Roma community, it was like a milestone, not only for the history of the Holocaust in Romania, but also for the memory and to the way in which from this point we can look and to how to understand what happened. So thank you so much, Marius.
That's very kind of you. Thank you. Yeah, that's a bit too serious, I suppose, for this Friday afternoon, Nico. But nevertheless, it has to be said that ultimately the conversation about the Holocaust in Romania, as all of you know, it's very fraught on many levels, not only because, particularly now in the past year or so, you have a resurgence of kind of right-wing nationalism that basically aims to rewrite certain chapters of the interwar period and the Antonescu period. Also, historically speaking, the situation is complex because parts of where the Holocaust happened didn't belong to Romania during the Second War. So that's the case of Northern Transylvania. So, and then, of course, after 1945, parts of Transnistria, Bessarabia, they were part of the Soviet Union. So access to documents, the conversation amongst historians was difficult because of historical reality. So this is, no one is basically, you can't do much about it. So it took some time. It took some time, naturally so, to build the proper consensus of we need to talk about this. You know, the big elephant in the room is the Holocaust, because Romania killed many Jews. That's something that it has to be said out loud. And he killed many Roma. And he aimed to, you know, basically eliminate entire populations based on racist and eugenic arguments. And this is because they believed there is something called the Romanian, ethnically speaking, that is better, that is racially, it needs to be protected, and it needs to be ensured that it has a racial future. Now, all of these words to us today, they sound, on the one hand, they sound very anachronistic because, I mean, who talks like that? But if you come from different tradition, if you come from a racial society like America or Britain, like proper racist societies, you understand how certain groups promote certain interpretation and narratives about themselves and about others in relation to themselves. So you are used to this sort of thing. In Romania, there was, because of communism in many ways, of course, but also because many people left. Most of the Jews who were left after the Holocaust, thousands, emigrated in the 60s to Israel or to other parts of the world. Those who remain in Romania are very, for many reasons, they found it difficult to talk about it until very recently. With the Roma, as Nico pointed out, there was a shame to talk about it. So in the family, he knows many families of people who were deported. I remember my first encounter with the old Roma man at the margins of the village of Săpânța in Maramureș, where my mother comes from. And he was there with his little tribes on massive hats and making the fire and cooking and preparing and probably, cursing everyone in the world. And he told me, so I was playing with the children, with the Roma children there, so I said, oh, how old are you? He said, I'm about 90 or something. I said, oh, my grandfather is. So do you remember Franz Joseph? I asked him. He was the Emperor of Austria because my grandfather was born under Franz Joseph. He said, oh yeah, I remember this guy. And then I said, oh, my grandfather was a prisoner and he was in a labor camp. And he said, what do you know about labor camps? He asked me. And I said, people were sent there during the war and some of them never returned. And he said, do you know about us, that we were sent there because he said gypsy, we're Țigan. I said, I never heard of that in my life. No one talked about these sort of things in school or nowhere. So, they wouldn't talk about that in a way that, how would you find out about it? So you see, it's important that these sort of things are being finally discussed. And Nico is very modest here, but where is he? I probably left. No, he's there. But his own work is actually what matters. The work done by the Roma themselves is more important than the work done by others about them. I'm happy to be a person who, through a certain relationship I have with the past and the region I come from, I can understand certain things. But that's it, basically. Others can do it better, and I hope Nico and his colleagues and other younger scholars will do it better. I'm happy that he thinks my work is of value, and I'm happy that he's my friend, and I learned a great deal from him.
Alina, did you have a question?
Yes, I have, and it's actually coming quite at the right time after Marius talked a little bit about the resurgence of some themes within Romanian society, because my question is very much along those lines. So ever since you published the book, it strikes me that this idea of the perfect Romanian is a very current, or it's an obsession that is now being constructed more and more in the Romanian society. And it's core to many, many debates that we're seeing and articulated in relation to others, be it others within our society or others, as we're looking now at the Asian immigrants working in Romania. So I think I would like to know from you some reflections, on this, if you can develop a little bit. And the other question that I have was, I also get the sense that this debate about history that is obviously we haven't come to terms with, it's mystified, but somehow it remains in some very niche circles. How do we break these circles to get to more and more Romanians? And how do we try to get into the school system where actually these information should be part of the national curriculum? So a lot to throw at you, sorry. But since this debate is so generous.
Good. Thank you very much.
Before you go ahead, Marius, I think
Yeah,
Carol
Carol,
has
I'll
been
give a
wanting.
short answer, Carol, and then you could hop in, okay? I'll start with the last question, Alina. So basically, it's very strange, and some of you know, so after the book was published, I was already for the past 5 years traveling across Romania with exhibitions about the history of racism and history of eugenics and this sort of thing. And I would go to schools and I would talk to the children. To the utter surprise of my fellow professors at the university would be like, you are a complete idiot. Why would you go to a high school and talk to people and you are a university professor? And I would be like, who reads your books? How do you get across to your students? How do you get across to younger people? And they'll be like, oh, we don't, this is not an issue we should be concerned about as university professors. I said, okay, well, this is not my style. So once the book was published, I went to various high schools. I went to a couple of high schools in Cluj, in Satu Mare, in Iași, in Vaslui. So I would go to the director of the school and say, can I come and talk about my book to Form 11 or Form 12? And then I will start with, okay, so do you think Antonescu was right in killing the Roma? Everybody would be like, yeah, boom. He should have killed all of them. And I said, well, we finally have a conversation. And then I will come and tell you, did you know that this is what happened? And they didn't know anything. I donated a lot of books. So I bought the books myself and I donated to schools across the country. So there is a way to actually, if you really want to do it yourself, to really bridge that kind of gap between the academic and the popular debate. I mean, obviously going to the televisions and going to radio shows or giving interviews in newspapers helps as well, but not the young people. The young people need to be seen and they need to feel you, as it were. You need to go and be present in their life in many ways. So we've done that with a number of events, exhibition, the book, and we did a trial about the Holocaust in Romania. And we did it, so it was basically trying to imagine what would have happened had all these racists and eugenicists been trialed after the war because they escaped justice. Yeah, mostly German eugenicists. Only 23 doctors were basically trialed at Nuremberg, but the majority of the German eugenicists were not trialed. It was the same in Romania. All of these names. So we did like a public trial, imagining with high schools. So we had the students being the prosecutors, the students being the defense. We present the arguments. It was like a play, you know? So they actually learn about the Holocaust and about eugenics and racism in this one. So it's possible. Of course, one person cannot change much, and no one is a prophet in his own country. So even after a while, I go like, okay, how much can I do? And I get tired. So about the first question, it was weird because I finished this book in June 2024. So I went to Bucharest to launch it. And of course, June 2024, no one actually felt that the bubble was about to burst. That burst in November 2024, when Georgescu became the #1 candidate for the presidential elections. But for the past 20 years, we've been saying, look, the younger Romanians are becoming more and more racist, are becoming more and more eugenically minded. They hate foreigners under the guise of complete cosmopolitanism. They travel all over the world. They're very well educated. They have money now. So it's not like my generation. We couldn't travel. I didn't have a passport until 1990, right? So these young people, they travel over the world. You see them in London, you see them in Paris. They have a Prada bag and they speak as if are absolutely dead on racist and eugenicists. So the failure of the system is immense, right? They didn't catch any of that in 30 years of education in Romania. Didn't catch any of that kind of coming and going in. And slowly, the perfect ethnic or ethno-national narrative about Romanians was becoming stronger and stronger. And in November, it just erupted. You see, had I waited a couple of more months, I could have included that because obviously that was to me, that would have changed everything because Georgescu spoke as if he read my book. So everything he says is in my book, but of course he hasn't read the book. But because he speaks like someone from the 1930s, he speaks like Donald Trump speaks now, as if, you know, you went to school with Charles Davenport. you know, who was a very famous American eugenicist, yeah? So, or which Madison Grant. I mean, of course, Donald Trump has not read Madison Grant, right? He doesn't have to read any of the classical racist literature because he's imbued with it. It's the same with these guys. So it is a serious issue and a big responsibility. And I think we bear a great deal of responsibility ourselves. And I'm done with the 7 or 10 of us here, but the intellectuals, so-called intellectuals and political elite in Romania, the failure is on them. And on the Orthodox Church as well, for not admitting how much extreme right legionary ideas it condoned, how much it could have done to denounce the Holocaust memory, how much it could have done to denounce the anti-Roma eugenics and racism. It's done none of that. And then the whole thing was growing. And, you know, it's much easier to dislike someone than to try to understand someone. This is a universal law. It's the same in America, it's the same in London, it's the same in Bucharest. Rather than understanding a Sri Lankan who, you know, has to come to Romania and, you know, make a living because his family is dying, you rather punch him in the face and you ask him to leave the country. It's much easier to be violent. It's much easier to be disrespectful people. We know this from history. This is what happened in the 1940s, and now Carol is going to come in. It was much easier to be disrespectful and to hate the Jews than to try to understand them.
Marius, Carol Cohn want to say something, please.
Yes, yeah.
Carol.
Hi, thank you for your patience, for your goodwill. And again, I'm one of these very rare and fast disappearing creatures. People call it conveniently Holocaust survivor. It doesn't give me any entitlement or whatever. I'm not weird or wiser or whatever. However, having missed the first 35 minutes of this wonderful, fascinating event, it was due to my electronic inadequacy. I didn't press the right button. However, I'm all yours. I would like, and again, I'm greatly indebted to Marius for his tireless efforts trying to keep alive, or at least to educate cohorts of people who should know about the horrors of the eugenics, of what people call whatever racism, anti-Semitism. So it's all very mixed. My origins, and again, it's the time is very limited, and I hate taking up or committing the ultimate sin of chronophagia or eating other people's time. However, I would be delighted if we could organize, and again, it's up to Marius and you guys, if we could organize another event, and I would be only too willing to share with you my experience being one of the survivors or the whatever victims from North Moldova, near Cernăuți, near Hotin, near Herța, and so on. And so I was one of the very few lucky ones to return from our peregrinations to Transnistria, to the old Transnistria and Ukraine. We are surrounded by, and again, I get slightly incoherent because I'm very emotional. I should control my my instincts, my emotions. We see all around us that the instincts that have led to the Holocaust, and as we talk about Romania, to the near wiping out of Romanian Jewry and the Gypsies, the Roma, we see the sentiment or the engine of what caused that alive and well in modern Europe and in the world generally. So having missed the first 35 minutes of this debate, probably I'll watch the recording. Once again, I would be only too glad and humbly to be part of another debate where someone who went through the events and learned quite a lot and stored, and thank God, you see my gray hair, but it hides quite a good memory. I'm very grateful. So I would like to share with you real events, but over to you. Again, I'm humbly part of the debate, and I hope we could have some more often.
Thank you, Carol.
Hi, I can see your hand is up. Is that
Yes.
okay?
Yes. I want to see something quite amusing, but very personal. Marius told us a lot, and I want to, I hope, to bring a little hope. This summer, I have spent my holiday with my family in Madeira. In Madeira, an island in the Atlantic, which has its autonomy for 600 years now. And there, people told me, we have here no crime. We have here no racism. We have here no hatred. Hatred. How do you say? We are happy. Yes, it is very nice on our land, but we are poor. I have told them, but come on, this is paradise on earth. How can you say you're poor? Well, he said, my informer, we have been poor, we used to be poor, but the government invested a lot of money in tourism, in infrastructure, the airport, the roads, and we are not poor anymore. And there are some creeks that are going to be between us now because of we are not poor anymore. It's quite amusing. Romania, who killed Jews, who killed Roma people, who killed a lot of people, was a wealthy country. And that world were extremely, Marius, help me, unequal. How do you say unequal in English?
What do you mean?
Unequal.
Unequal distributed. So a lot of hatred because of this. This example of Madeira, all the people on the island were quite, let's say, communitary. There are not a lot of discrepancies of wealth between them. They're all the same. They all talk Portuguese. The race was not a matter for them. The occupation now, but along with this coming of money, of wealth, they started to, well, to not to separate, but to level on different levels of wealth. I'm better than you. I have more. You have less, and there are the first seeds of
Siloing. So
yes,
essentially
yes.
building bubbles.
I don't know if between us, between you, is there an historian, anthropologist, but I think Madeira can be seen as a living experiment of how inequity is made. This island used to be happy for 600 years. Now they're falling apart very, very, very slowly. You can go there this winter. Their winter are their winter are paradise for Romania or for British, or they're paradise. They're the 20 degrees in the let's say in the day, and there are I mean Celsius, and 12 degrees in the night in January. This is paradise. So you can go there and see you with your own eyes. Their Shire society is little by little falling apart because of coming of money, of coming of let's say our bad habits of okay. That and my second idea. Francois Seco, where are you from?
France.
France. So your mother language is Francais.
Yes.
Okay. And you live in London?
No, right now I'm in Stockholm.
Oh, so we're a big family here. Okay.
Right.
So no, Francois, what is your interest? What is your concern? What is your reason to be here talking about a book written in Romania about eugenics in interwars Romania? Give me your reason to be here.
Well, I'm more here to listen than to speak, but I would say I have two interests. First one is always because it's always nice to listen to Marius. And second one is because I took an interest in eugenics as a PhD student. And also because, and I took this interest because I was really interested in how some people at some times, and especially in the interwar period, started thinking about models of society that were based on some sort of hierarchies. I wanted to understand these people, to understand these hierarchies and these constructions of societies in a very broad sense.
Okay.
Thank you very much, Francois. One thing that we don't normally do at Carta de Vineri is pick on people, but you can almost always be guaranteed that with Mihai. So that's all I'm going to say. So apologies for that. Can I just go back to the subject? So I appreciate the fact that most of you are really well-read people with a lot of intellectual richness that you can share. From my perspective, I read the book from a very simple, everyday person point of view. And one of the things that struck me, thinking about not just the book, but also Carol's intervention, is when you mention about your going into Romanian schools and sharing the book with the schools, it reminded me about something that I experienced when I went to visit Italy. In Florence, there's a big synagogue. And one of the things that happened during that visit is that a school class came around, and there's a room upstairs in the synagogue that is built mimicking the type of places where people used to be either carried in the trains or kept. And the way that the school class was taught was to essentially allow the children to sit down on the floor all together and feel how it felt, and then allow them to speak. So Carol, please do come in.
Yeah, there is a question from Liliana first, and then I don't want to miss that, please. Serena, and if we have time, we could take some more.
I'll keep very short. Thank you so much for the book. So look, I'm from Republic of Moldova, so I think this discussion is not even close to be open in the area I'm coming from. And I don't know if you're familiar with that scandal which happened with the book, history book, for the school book for graduates, nearly high schoolers, who actually distorts the realities. So my question is, like, not sure you thought about it, but let's try. How do you explain that European Union is putting, so given Moldova's aspiration, the Republic of Moldova's aspiration to become part of the bigger family. And I know that there are lots of projects they are working on, the I don't know, equality and equal pay and so many things. Moldova is really listening to what European Union is asking us to do. How do you explain that there is so little pressure coming from European Union, for instance, for Republic of Moldova to look a bit closer at this, you know, historical events related to Holocaust? And our president Maia Sandu, for instance, goes to commemorate to Auschwitz when, you know, we have Bogdanovka, we have other places near. So what's your thinking?
No, that's a very good question. And I've got a number of ideas. The first one, I think they've probably realized by now that, particularly with the East Europeans, it's pointless in many ways to push for that, because it's all a hypocritical game. So look at Romania. I mean, how many Romanian politicians really, really care about the Holocaust seriously? They don't. But they, of course, they would go to any event that commemorates the Holocaust. They will be visible in certain synagogues for celebration of key Jewish holidays. Some of them will even go and pretend, obviously, that they understand. But that's real engagement. And you could see this because the society at large is absolutely imbued with the denial. The recent poll we had was basically saying that Antonescu is still considered a whole war hero for like almost 35 or 40% of the Romanians.
Yeah.
So this discrepancy between actually engaging truly and coming to terms with the past in a genuine matter has not happened. So you didn't do it properly in schools, you didn't change the curriculum, you didn't do any of that. So having seen that example, I don't think it matters much now to many European officials whether Moldova would properly follow this or not. Now, this is not to say that actually we should be happy about that. On the contrary, it has to be done in many ways in total honesty, and it has to be done properly. So Moldova actually does have a better chance than Romania to do it properly, to change the curriculum, to teach young people in schools about the Holocaust without the European Union putting pressure on it. Just do it because they believe it's the right thing to do. You'll never force someone to do something because they don't believe it's the right thing to do. This is what happened with Romania. They had to do all of that because they wanted to get into NATO, European Union. They did it all for hypocritical reasons. And we see the results now. They didn't do it because they believed it was the right thing to do. And it is very sad. As a nation, as a country, as a society, the consequences of that hypocritical attitude is very hard to pay. And now we pay the price for it. You could see it absolutely clearly. The other thing is that I think in many ways, there is obviously a tendency in the European Union now to go more towards the right. So a lot of the European parties or European politicians in the European Parliament actually are on the right, if not in terms of their allegiance, certainly in terms of their ideas. And you could see the next elections that are coming around, more of these parties will be becoming even more popular. In France, certainly, we'll see what happens in Britain. So the European mind about the Holocaust is under transformation itself. So we can see that thing happening across, and it's a serious struggle here as well in Britain, as you know, to actually keep the memory of the Holocaust and to teach about it. And here you have so many communities, so much money, so many organizations, so much public display of anti-racist attitudes, and yet if you walk around the streets of London, most of them will be either ignorant about the Holocaust, or they will say it didn't happen, or they will hate the Jews anyway. So you can imagine that in a country like Romania, which didn't want to do it in the first place. I mean, had it been for the Romanians, they would not have done it.
Yeah.
Elie Wiesel Commission was absolutely imposed on them, on Iliescu, to do it from Washington. It's not because he believed that this is the right thing to do. And that's my answer to that. And it's a serious problem.
Yeah, thank you.
Carol, you were going to add to what I was saying earlier, I'm assuming.
Yes, Carol.
again, I'm very eager, very keen, and I've been enticed to react to one or two items I just heard. Sorina talked about that experience in Firenze and Florence for the visit of the pupils visiting the synagogue. Reminds me something very interesting, although from a different period and history, but not so distant. There is and again, this glorious part of Italy, it's where the Renaissance has started. And the actual capital of it is in Siena. And apparently there is, in the main piazza, the main square, there is the very old synagogue rebuilt in Siena. There is a plaque there, both in English and no, only in Italian. And someone who didn't know the contents asked me to translate. It states clearly that sometime in June, I forgot the exact date, 1799, just a few months before the 19th century, the glory of Toscana, again, the center of this fantastic explosion of culture, of civilization, created an event that somehow the nationalists, they were unhappy about some events, and they burned alive all the attendants of the synagogue during a service in 1799, burning about 90 or 100 people. And that was not in some savage, primitive area. It was, again, the heart of the Rinascimento, the area that did and still produces great works of art, of culture, of civilization. So it's a challenge. And something else, and I don't want to lose friends, regarding the eagerness of Moldova and some other countries to join the European Union. I'm, let's say, very, I don't know, very active student of history, of recent events and not so recent. And the European Union has evolved because Le Grand Projet was initially, as you probably all know, started at the late 40s after the defeat of Germany and so on, and the destruction of Europe, the economy and so on. So 2 or 3 countries, the Benelux country, Germany and Italy, decided to create a coal and steel union. It lasted for a few years and it helped those countries in dire needs with the Marshall Plan as well. Eventually it moved, and again, there were the fathers or the godfathers of this, moved it to the to make it a common market. And under false pretenses, it became, and again, it deceived millions of people who thought they are voting to join a market, which is fantastic. But it evolved into a union. And people never expected, you know, when you go to the market, you buy, you sell or whatever, do not share your bedroom with the guy, the stall holder in the market. You do not allow him to come and share your facilities. And it became now a reenactment of the old Soviet Union. I'm sorry to spoil the illusions and the dreams of other people. It, and again, you said about reinvigoration of the right wing and so on, because it is to some extent a reaction of this imposed union. The 22, let's say, the commissioners are like the old commissars of the Politburo and the Kremlin, unelected, and it destroys one's great dream and project. It not only disillusions people, it poisons their ideals, and millions of ordinary people look around. They do not recognize their countries anymore. We live in London, we live in England. We see this happening all the time. It's part of the Le Grand Projet European Union. I'm really sorry if I offend or somehow disappoint some of the people, but we should deal with this. The great European Union is unable to defend itself, and unwilling or unable. We see in Ukraine, which is just a few hundred miles from it, is victimized, is bombed into the Stone Age, and Europe is doing next to nothing. On the contrary, it imposes conditions not to fire its missile, its supplies to Ukraine.
Carol.
I will
let's
try to debate this.
Thank you, Carol. Thank you. Let's sorry, I know that the organizers are too polite to stop you, but
sure,
you could slap me on the back when we meet for being
you're quite right,
for being Obraznik, but I had to stop it now. Let's take another question, please, and then we'll close this because people need to go and it's
sure.
late. Thank
No
you.
problem.
I was just going to ask
Thank
you
you.
how many more questions you wanted to take. There is one in the chat. Unless anyone else.
I've got one that I'm going to ask as a closure from Diana, who raised it at the very beginning, and it actually matches the kind of questions that we would ask as a closing statement. So Diana stated very early that she's learned history a lot more in her 23 years of living in the UK, and is looking for essentially what books to read to find the truth. So it's one of the things that we would normally ask anybody that would come on Carta de Vineri, what books do you recommend? And it kind of matches Diana's questions. So I'm happy to address the other two, Marius, by email, if that's okay with you.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, that's a difficult question, and I feel slightly uncomfortable because I know when you asked Yolanda this question, she recommended my book, but to be honest, I don't think that we should be searching the truth. This is a very difficult thing, and some of us never find the truth. Some of us find the truth early on in our lives, and we're very happy with what we found. It's not in the books. Sometimes the truth is just in the leaf of a plant, sometimes in the smile of a child. The truth is maybe the good morning drink. Maybe the truth is in the book, and certainly history books should contain some truth. And I hope people will read more history books. And there are many good books out there. And now there are good books. If you are able to read in different languages, you should try to read in different languages. If you're able to read in French, read some French books. If you can read in German, read some German books. If you're able to read in Romanian, read some Romanian books about, it's important. One particular book to recommend, Serena and Nicola, I do not have, because I think I would find it slightly difficult to point out towards one particular author. But there are many books that I think they are in the making, and some of them have been published about history and about Romanian history. There are not many books. I mean, to be honest, if I don't want to end up on a very critical note and say, you know, none of the books are good, or all the books are good. I think, like I recommend this to my own readers, I think you should be able by now to make your own opinion about certain things. If you haven't by now, probably it's too late. So just leave it where it is. But if you are able to have an opinion and understand things, try to find those books that actually give you a bit more substance, build your argument, build your confidence. All of us are very well read. If I look around you, I know all of you have read at least 5,000 to 2 million books in your lifetime. So we're very well learned. Are we confident? Some of us are. Some of us aren't. Confidence to speak about topics, to raise issues of global importance, of national importance, of personal importance, are actually that have to be cultivated. So that would be my closing message, Serena. You know, we need to be able to speak about things, you know, that actually matter to us. Really matter to us. Like Mihai said, you know, what really matters to you is what should drive you.
Yeah.
And that's the end of it.
Thank you very much. Mihai, were you going to add something?
Well, I'm not that diplomatic as Marius is. I'm far more brutal. Well, I have a recommendation. If you can read books of those authors who they have changed their mind. I mean, an author who wrote a book, who has written a book. This is this, this is that, and whatever. And after that, he writes another book. People, I beg your pardon, I was an idiot. Well, these books must be read. When a man, a woman, a human being, goes through life, has a different experiences, has some convictions, and after that, he realized he was living a lie, and after that he says, "I beg your pardon,
Okay,
I
so
was an idiot."
what you're
Well,
recommending is essentially change of
it-
perspective matters
no,
at different times in life.
I'm something very clear in my mind, there is an American author called Robert Kaplan, and Robert Kaplan, as a political advisor of President of America, anything, he strongly advised the invasion of Iraq in a war. I don't remember the war. And after that, Robert Kaplan wrote a book and says, I had a depression after my opinion was followed by the president of America. The Iraq was invaded and the civil war followed, and the carnage, what happened there. So I was wrong. I was in a mistake. So this is kind of the history book you have to read. Not over people who knows everything, but people who says, well,
Mihai.
I thought just a minute. I thought I knew everything, and I was wrong. I was wrong. This is the idea. I was wrong. When somebody told you I was wrong, he is to be trusted. Sorry, Marius.
Thank you.
It's fine. I'm just saying that if I were to read all of the books of those idiots who invaded countries and now they think they're idiots and they regret it, then we might have a problem. So
yes, you're right.
Yeah.
You're right.
Yeah.
yes, all of these people who invaded Iraq and then they realized was the terrible mistakes. They invaded Poland and they realized, well, yes, well now we are idiots. We did something terrible.
Okay.
I know the principle of what you're saying, and I agree with that. It's good to actually to be able to look at yourself and say you are wrong. That's very important.
Yes, this is the idea. Thank you, Marius.
Okay.
You're very
Thank you
just
very much. So
Okay.
on that note, reading is important. I have put a few links in the chat. One of the books recommended by Mihai at the very beginning, and one of the books that we visited, which has some connection with today's discussion, with a dialogue with Howard Reich on the book that he wrote in dialogue with Elie Wiesel, The Art of Inventing Hope, which is one of my very, very favorite books. And then one of the books that I happened to read last year, during the Romanian elections and all the turmoil that was happening at the time, which is Robert Kaplan in Europe's Shadow, which seemed to be apt. I didn't choose it; it just happened to fall that way. But if you're interested in perspectives, then I suggest that you also sign up for our next event, which is through the eyes of a Scots person. Behind the curtain, the kilt behind the curtain, which is the next episode on Carta de Viner, simply because looking at your history through the eyes of a foreigner sometimes actually helps you find yourself. So thank you very much for tonight. It has been definitely an interesting ride, a rowdy audience. So thank you for all your interventions, and hopefully you have a good weekend thinking things through, and maybe we can manage to make a change. Thank you. Good night.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye bye, everyone.
Bye.
Thank you.